Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Hawk Blogger, and technically it's not the morning. So if you want to get me on that, you can. Apologies for a later start today. It's 12:20 or so on Monday, now Monday afternoon. And I got a late start because it's a bye week. The Seahawks had Mike McDonald's press conference at 10:15 this morning. So as soon as I was done writing my morning after column over at hawkblogger.com, I hopped in the car, drove over to the VMAC, asked Mike McDonald a bunch of questions, and had some stuff to do, and then just came back. I haven't eaten breakfast yet, but the first thing I wanted to do when I got home is kick off Hawk Blogger Mornings and say hello to all of you after what was a agonizing performance again for your Seattle Seahawks, and a lot to break down, a lot to react to, and we'll get through this one together like we do all the time, and like we will for years and years to come, if everything treats us well. So. Today is a little bit different than a normal Monday because of the schedule flip. We're not able to have Robert Mays on today. Robert is going to come on tomorrow. He'll be on at 8:30 a.m. We will have Mike Randall on from FTN at 8 a.m. So we'll have a double guest day tomorrow. That'll be great. And then Wednesday, we will have Big Ray Roberts on for Big Ray's Rewind. So that'll be great. I've got some things I'm working on for later in the week for Thursday. We'll see. I'm hoping we will bring back Dave Bowling with Mike Sando on Friday. Have not finalized that with those guys, but we got a lot of stuff coming to you this week. And I think I have some things I want to do. I want to use the bye week myself to reflect on the team, to maybe do a couple deep dives on a couple things related to the team. And I also I got to get back outside and get some exercise and do some things like that. So hopefully all that happens, and I hope you guys all get a chance to do that as well. Take care of your mentals, as Marshawn would say. You know, it's a long season. It has been a rough 6-game stretch. The Seahawks have lost 5 of 6. You know, they've lost 4 in a row at home. Fans are up in arms, as is reasonable to be. And what happens in these situations generally is people eat their own. Like, fan bases cannibalize each other, and they get angry at each other because they think they've told you all along that this guy isn't good, or they've told you all along that this guy needed a chance, or I told you that this coach was never going to work out, or whatever. Like, when there's this many things that have been going wrong, it's not hard to pick something out and say, that's not good. And I think that part of what I love about following football and following the Seahawks and all the time that I've sunk it over the years is I feel like I've had a pretty good opportunity to separate my emotions from my analysis, and that's part of what blogging over the years and now doing this show every single day has helped do, and it's why I always write my column as a morning after, because honestly, I never wanted to do post-game shows. I'm way too emotional after a game in most cases, but Evan Hill, that guy, typical Evan, was like, we got to do post-game shows. And so started doing post-game shows years ago. The guy barely shows up for post-game shows. So it's become my thing, which is fine. And actually I've started to enjoy that. It's a different kind of analysis that comes for me right after the game, but not so much in this case. When I look back at this game, there's some like impossible to argue with truths. The Seahawks are playing undisciplined, sloppy, mistake filled football. They are doing those things. Their offensive line is not good, and it is not getting better. And I could go on, and I will. There's a lot of these things that are just true. And I look at that, and I've seen, I Don't think I don't see it. People tagging me, sharing pictures of Jim Mora Jr., people talking about Brandon Staley, all these other things. And I understand the frustration, and I understand why people would jump to some of those conclusions. I think this is a very messy looking team right now. And the first place you go when things are looking undisciplined, where there's a lot of mistakes, is coaching. That's just a reality. And I think it's absolutely fine to look at the coaching staff and say, like, okay, you guys don't have this down quite yet. I would be in a much different place mentally. And I probably have maybe a pitchfork in hand, not necessarily ready to change any coaching, but I would be just exasperated if the defense didn't take a step forward yesterday. And when I look at that defensive performance yesterday, not only was it a step forward, that was like 10 steps forward. That was a performance that I wouldn't have reasonably expected or hoped for. I would have been so upset with myself and disappointed with myself if I, before the game, told all of you that there's a reason to expect the Seahawks to play that good a defense. There's a reason to expect the Seahawks to force 7 3-and-outs, which had only happened one time in the previous 115 games that Sean McVay has coached in Los Angeles. That's less than 1% of the games he's been coach of the Rams have had 7 3-and-outs. I would have been disappointed if it suggested it was possible the Seahawks would start out with 4 possessions where they hold the Rams scoreless. Pete Carroll never did that in any of his time with the Seahawks. There was no credible reason to expect the defense to play that well 1 week after playing that poorly against Buffalo with largely the same personnel against an opponent that had all of their weapons and had really done well against a Minnesota Vikings defense that has been excellent and consistent all year. But they did. They did. So that performance so far exceeded my expectations, and we can go back through aspects of it. There were so many chances for that defense to erode, to return to their ways, to start giving up rushing yards, to give up a first down. Everyone's rightfully talking about that amazing drive at the end of the game where they get the big pass on 2nd and 24 to Cody White. They get the big pass to JSN on 4th down. They get, the touchdown to tie the game. All those things were amazing. None of that happens if the Seahawks don't hold the Rams on a 3-and-out in that prior series. And let's be really honest. I mean, in any other game this season, the Rams run out the clock. When the Seahawks could not, when they gave up a sack on the preceding possession and moved way back and had to punt, the Seahawks went 3 plays, -7 yards on the penultimate possession of the regulation. And then they kicked it to the Rams. The Rams got the ball at their 28-yard line. They went 3 plays, 1 yard. And I thought that was impressive. For this team to end up being meaningful, for it to be relevant, there's only one way that's going to happen, and that is Mike Macdonald has to be the Sean McVay of defense. That's what people have called him. He has to be the Mike Holmgren of defense, if you prefer. Like someone who is masterful on that side of the ball and will get his defenses year in, year out to be, if not the best, among the best in the NFL. Like, you have a defensive head coach. The only reason that works is if your head coach is really giving you a scheme advantage on that side of the ball. And that hasn't been the case a lot of this season. In fact, the defense has been the bigger part of the problem most of the season. And so that was a red flag waving wildly. And now they faced another tough opponent, an opponent that's given them so much trouble over the years. And not only did they play the best game, maybe defensively, the Seahawks have played against McVay, but they did it at a time where they were in their worst spiral. They were playing their worst football heading into that game. So for me, that's really reassuring. And there's a lot of folks that are going to look at this and be like, you know what? You're crazy. There's so much else going wrong. All these other things, don't get it. And that's fine. I'm just telling you where I'm at. I think that next game against the 49ers will be really interesting. And I wouldn't say I'm set up to expect that to be the same as what we saw against the Rams. But, you know, we saw what happened when they did better against the Falcons, but that wasn't as good as what we saw against the Rams. I can explain why, but it was not as good. And then after the Falcons, we saw the Bills, and it was like, okay, this is 6 straight weeks of absolutely trash run defense. And I put this in my article this morning. I think I can pull it up here so you guys can see it. This is probably the easiest way to do it. Let me share my screen. I'm going to have to change a couple things. You know what? Yeah, I'll do it. Hold on one second. I got to change screens in order for this to work. While I do that, let me give a second to just tell you, if you have not gone over to Pagliacci and had their mushroom pizza, I think you should. They have great specials right now. In fact, I think when I went with my family this week, I guess it was last week now, we went and had, I think they had like a squash pizza or like an autumn harvest pizza, and my family was freaking out about it. I'm kind of a pepperoni guy, so it wasn't as much me, but they all loved it. And we really thank Pagliacci for being a great sponsor. And I think a lot of folks have told me they've gone to Pagliacci since they visit, and they've just loved what they've had there. So thank you to Pagliacci. You can get access to great deals if you go to hello.pagliacci.com/hawk-blogger. Sign up there and get access to all the best deals on Pagliacci pizza just for people that listen to this show. All right, so let me share my screen and I'll share this for you guys. And let me make this bigger. Maybe not that big, and get it in screen for you. All right. So this is a look at the Seahawks run defense week after week, from week 4 on, where things really started to fall apart. And what I wanted to kind of show is a couple trends here. So maybe the 2 most important trends. This red, that represents explosive rush plays of 10 or more yards. And you can see like a large chunk of plays in against the Lions and against the Giants going for 10 or more yards. Similarly, against 49ers, it gets a little bit better, but it's still a reasonably large chunk. Atlanta, similar to the 49ers, then it got worse against the Bills. It actually increased as a percentage of run plays, the explosives. You noticed anything different about yesterday? Zero explosive rush plays against the Rams, against Kyron Williams, against an offensive line that is built for the run game, against a coach who has schemed the run game as well as anybody of late. Zero. The other trend to see, like percentage of plays that were stuffed, 1 yard or less. Okay. This dark green here. So against Detroit, we're at a little over 25%. That goes down against the Giants to under 25%, back up against the 49ers, then down, down, down against the next three opponents. Then look what happens. Almost 50% of the rushing attempts by the Rams yesterday were for 1 yard or less. I know everyone's probably like, well, come up with some reason why that's not a big deal. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. And I said it last week that if you did nothing else, find a way to stop the run. I didn't care if you threw for 500 yards, just stop the run. And the encouraging thing is that they were able to do that. So what does this mean? And, if you're someone who's just like, well, who cares? They lost. They are 4-5. They've lost 5 of 6. Yeah. If your success measure for this season is about wins and losses, the season's already kind of lost. Like, could the Seahawks run off a big string of wins and turn everything around? Sure. Like, I honestly think that they are talented enough that they could do that. Why do I think that? Well, they finally got their defense to play a few weeks in a row. Mike McDonald talked about this, that continuity on the defensive side of the ball and having the same people has helped the communication, the way that they're playing, and that's a factor. We saw what they could do in this game, and I think there's more that can happen. They'll eventually, hopefully, get Rayshon Jenkins back. They'll eventually, hopefully, get Uchenna Nwosu back. All these things will be positive. So we know the defense they played yesterday, of course, across the season is top 10, top 12 at worst. Like that is a legitimately high quality defense that you run out there week in, week out. Then the offense, we have seen the offense. I mean, they still lead the league in passing for what it's worth. We've seen the offense actually be pretty darn good this year. So we've seen what they're capable of. It's just that they have not done it consistently, and they've turned the ball over too much. And then they've started having these crazy things like the snap problems and all that crap come up, right? Like, there's a lot of issues that have come up with this Seahawks offense. And I think a lot of those outside of the offensive line, we're going to talk about that. There's reason to think when you add DK Metcalf back in, when you add Abe Lucas back in, that the offense can put it together enough to where they can win games. And even yesterday, with all the problems, they still put 20 points on the board in regulation. So if your thing is about wins and losses, I get it. For me, the only thing I really, really, really care about is, can I see the trajectory, even if it's uneven, where they're building something that could be interesting? And a foundational part of that is Mike McDonald and the defense. And yesterday for me was a really big moment against a really good offensive coach and a really good quarterback to say, okay, can exhale a little bit. I'm not saying everything's good, never going to go be bad again, but that's a big deal in the grand scheme of things. The next thing that I think was really big is, okay, 2 games without DK Metcalf, and JSN yesterday looked like a difference-making receiver. Like, I think he is. And I think a lot of folks have had problems with him, but I think he is what he showed yesterday. And now defenses have seen that. And when DK comes back, there's going to be some decisions to make for coverage teams about how they're going to cover both of those guys. And I do think that changes the calculus for teams. And I think that can open up some other stuff. But here's where things are not rosy. The offensive line is so far from where it needs to be. that they're just they are such a crack in the foundation that almost nothing can be built on top of it. And what I heard from Coach McDonald today in his press conference today and yesterday, one, he talked about how hard the offensive line's playing. My initial interpretation of that is that he feels like they've tapped out the potential of the players and they might need to make some personnel moves. That's possible. I wouldn't be shocked if he and John Schneider go out and get a veteran offensive lineman, knowing that George Fant's probably lost for the year, knowing that they're just thin at, in terms of guard play that they can put out there. I think they know that Anthony Bradford is not the answer. And the fact that they went through this competition for so long and then ended up with Anthony Bradford and he still is playing poorly. Mike McDonald's acknowledged that it's not ideal to have a rotation on the offensive line and that it indicates you're not where you want to be. So they already know that that's a problem position, and they basically just had to fall back into Anthony Bradford. So I think it is possible that they will make a move this week. I'm not saying I think they should, by the way, but I think they could. The other piece there is Abe Lucas. I asked Mike McDonald today, is there a chance he's going to come back against the Niners? And he said, yes, there is a chance. And the reason I think that is notable is because he had been very cautious about talking about Abe Lucas, talking about that he doesn't even want to talk about him being, quote, on schedule. They're just going to play it out. For him to indicate that there's an opportunity for him to potentially play in his first game after the bye is the first time he has acknowledged a, quote, schedule. And it doesn't mean that he has to play by that time, but it does mean that the potential's there. And they have to know how overmatched Mike Jarrell is right now. I tried to warn everybody after that first week. I was so happy for him against the Falcons to have a solid game, and the team won, and he had some good moments. You watch that tape, and there's a lot of things that weren't ideal. And then, he goes against the Bills, and he goes against the Rams, and he's just not ready. Like, maybe he'll make steps. I'm not down on his potential. Like, so many rookie tackles struggle. I mean, across the board. But he's not ready. So if Abe Lucas can come back, and if Abe Lucas can be even a shadow of his former self, when I look at, I'll give you the latest numbers on allowed pressure for the Seahawks. 40% of the pressure allowed by the Seahawks this year is coming from the right tackle position. So we've all just been, we know what we're dealing with, but we've been on our fourth string right tackle for 3 weeks now. There's not a lot of NFL teams that do well in that situation, and especially against some of the teams they've been going against. So I do feel like there's another opportunity there for the offensive line to take a step forward. And it looks like there's a lot of conversation on chat right now about Sam Howell and Geno Smith. So let's talk about that. One thing I will just say is I would ask folks to, once you've made your point, let's not make the point over and over and over again. People get you. But it, if you made your case, make your case and kind of move on. So let's try to keep chat as enjoyable of an experience as possible. Here's where I am on the Sam Howell, Geno Smith thing. That was a completely unacceptable performance from Geno Smith yesterday in the mistakes that he made in the red zone. Those were game-losing plays. Each one of them by itself was a game-losing play. For him to have two of those plays is kind of crazy. And there's just no explanation that is a reasonable one for those to happen. And I'll give you the explanation that's out there and why I don't buy it. His arm was hit. He was trying to throw the ball away on the interception that turned into the pick six. His arm was hit, didn't get the ball where he wanted it to be, and it got picked off. The next one, A.J. Barner was held by the defensive lineman. So Barner wasn't where Geno was expecting him to be based on the momentum that Barner had. And Geno threw it in anticipation, generally like what you have to do, to the space where Barner was going to be. And that got picked. Here's why I would not defend Geno in that situation, in either of those situations. There's a risk-reward ratio on every throw you make as a quarterback and every throw you don't make. And right now, Geno is living too close to the edge and taking too many chances by trying to give his receivers a chance to get open for the play to develop, because there was so much rapid pressure in this game, so much rapid pressure that he just knew they couldn't function if he didn't just give them a little bit more time. And what that leads to is these moments where it's a split-second difference between whether you can throw the ball away or whether your arm gets hit and you throw an interception that turns the game from going ahead to being behind and losing the game. And at this point, the team needs more of him throwing the ball away, him just spiking it, him taking a sack, him running it out of bounds, whatever, and less trying to make a hero play. And it's such a difficult balance to strike because you don't get the touchdowns in the end of the first half without hero play from Geno Smith. You don't get some of the throws that he made in this game without hero play from Geno Smith. And so you got to understand as a fan that asking him to play safer, to have a quicker release, getting rid of the ball in 2.3 seconds or, really, really fast, and just, if it's not there, first read, toss it out of bounds or like whatever. You have to understand the other side of that, which is you're going to get fewer plays. Your offense is going to stall. Your offense is going to be less dynamic. And so everyone wants to make it as simple as Geno Smith sucks. Geno Smith throws too many picks. I don't think it's that simple. I think there's very, very few quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think there's any quarterbacks in the NFL that would be thriving behind this offensive line and this pass protection and this lack of run game, all those things combined. So when I evaluate Geno Smith, and I asked Coach McDonald about this today, how hard is it to evaluate your quarterback when he's under pressure on 60% of his dropbacks? It's like wild. He's like, it's really hard. Like they're not doing a good enough job of protecting him. And it's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy at one point. If he's getting hit this much and he's under this much pressure, he's going to get hurt. I don't want him to, but like you cannot take this many hits and last. And so I think he's got to get back to what he was doing earlier in the year, which was throwing the ball in 2.4 seconds or less. And there's a limit to what you can do in those situations, but that's how he's got to play. And I think it's got to be a situation where if he doesn't see the play that he wants, he's got to just get rid of the ball. That his default has to be, I'm not going to take a risk. And I think he's just got to be on the other side of that equation for a little while. Now, everyone is saying, like, let's play Sam Howell. Well, Sam Howell led the NFL in interceptions last year. Sam Howell got sacked more than any quarterback in football last year. I like Sam Howell. I'm hopeful about Sam Howell. I think it is a fan-centric take. I'm a fan. I have fan-centric takes, but I'm saying it is a fan-centric take to think that Sam Howell is going to come in here and outperform Geno Smith. There is not a single person in the media who watched practices this year, a single person on the team, player or coach or personnel person, who would tell you they would expect Sam Howell to perform better than Geno Smith behind this offensive line and with this running game. The one thing that Sam Howell has in his favor over Geno Smith is that he's a little bit more of a scrambler and a, backyard football kind of player that can kind of a little bit more of the Russell Wilson creativity and, making plays off the run. When you have a bad offensive line, that can be helpful. It can also make things worse. Russ contributed to so many of his pressures when he was with the Seahawks. He made it so much harder on his offensive line. It could very reasonably get worse in that situation. Sam Howell holds onto the ball longer than Geno Smith. There's a lot of things that Sam Howell would be out there, and a lot of them wouldn't necessarily be better. So I understand people just want to see different. If you're saying that because you want to potentially improve, there's very little chance that that's what would happen. If you're saying that because you're just done with Geno Smith and you want to see anything else and you're willing to lose every other game the rest of the season in order to see your young quarterback and see if he can develop, I think that's a fairer take to have. But I think that's the take you have to have. You're like, I don't care about winning. I just want to see my young quarterback get snaps and see if he's the guy. If that's your explanation or your take, I think that's more defensible. If your take is we got a better chance to win with Sam Howell, that's just not true. I don't think there's any evidence to demonstrate that that's true. And I will just say Geno Smith has been one of the best quarterbacks passing under pressure and mitigating sacks and mitigating pressure than any other quarterback in the NFL this year. To go from that to the guy that was sacked the most in the NFL last year, I'm just telling you guys, you're not going to get better by doing that. As I said last night on the postgame show, I do think it is a fair conversation to start having. Geno Smith lost that game as much as anybody else, and maybe more. I wonder how he's going to respond, and I think he deserves the chance to respond, and he's going to get a big opportunity. There's a lot of big games the rest of the year, at least quality opponents, I should say, the rest of the year. And if Geno Smith comes out and plays his first great game against the 49ers, that'll answer a lot of questions. And I think that will quiet a lot of people, at least for the moment. So I don't anticipate any change there. People can want it to. I don't think it will. I don't think they're going to make a change at quarterback anytime soon, and maybe anytime this year. But what I do wonder about is getting back to the offensive line. I thought I heard the impression I came away with when I was listening to Mike McDonald talk this morning was I think he's got some issue with how they're protecting, how they're coaching on the offensive side of the ball. I think he's got some questions and some concerns about the play calls in terms of how much protection Geno's being offered, how much people are being left in to chip or protect. I think he's got questions about the protection scheme and what they're asking of their least talented players. like, or at least experienced, I would say, at least the right side of the line. He didn't say any of those things, but he did say, we've got to help those guys. He said, those guys are playing really hard. We've got to help them more. Who's we? That's coaches. So I do wonder if there's going to be a pretty big conversation with Ryan Grubb, Scott Huff, Mike McDonald, the whole crew about what are we going to do? This can't continue. We got to make a significant change. And I'm here for it. Like, let's see what they come up with. And that's part of why I just wonder if, let's say, Mike McDonald goes in there and he says, look, Ryan, Scott, this isn't working. What are we doing here? And they come back and they're like, well, here, Anthony Bradford is only capable of X, Y, and Z. Mike Jarrell is only capable of X, Y, and Z. We can do this and this, but that means we're going to take away this and that. And if they have explanations that Mike McDonald's like, I get it, then I think Mike McDonald's next move is going to be walking down the hall to John Schneider and saying, like, we need something. We need to make a move. Like, we're going to lose this team. We're going to lose the locker room if we don't make a move. And whether it's Brandon Scherf from Jacksonville or whoever else, I will probably do a show this week at some point on offensive line options, or at least I'll do some research on it. Cowboys, if there's anybody that's interesting there, they're looking like they might have to throw in the towel with the Dak situation. Anyway, there might be some. I don't think there's a lot of great options, but I think there's a chance they will make a move. And again, I'm not convinced that's the right thing to do. I think draft picks are pretty valuable, but if they're going to be trading like a 6th or a 7th, then sure, go get a vet, just try to stabilize the right side of that line, add Abe Lucas back in. And I have seen it. I've been here. One player can make a massive difference to an offensive line. When the Seahawks added Chris Terry in the 2002 season to play right tackle off of waivers, that offense took off. It took off. And I mean, it was night and day. Now, I'm not saying that they've got Walter Jones on the other side of the line or Steve Hutchinson on the other side of the line or Robbie Tobeck in the middle or any of those things. But I have seen how much of a difference a single offensive lineman can make. And so that's part of where I still believe, like, I'm in the camp of when Abe Lucas is back, I just believe this guy physically is a mauler and capable of things that nobody else on the roster is. I think he can make a really big difference. And if you then add on top of that a veteran guard on the right side who just isn't the worst right guard in the NFL, then all of a sudden your right side of the line is not a problem on every single snap. Yeah, even if it's like 10 better snaps a game, you give Geno Smith and Kenneth Walker and DK Metcalf and JSN 10 better snaps a game than they're getting right now, I think you get 20 to 30% more scoring than you're getting right now. Like, I do think there's that much at stake with the line. I'm not particularly convinced that they're going to get somebody that they can bring in that's going to play guard and be that much better. For what it's worth, like Brandon Scherf, who people have talked about, he's got a comparable PFF grade to Laken Tomlinson, who pretty much every Seahawks fan wants to eject into the atmosphere. And you could say what you want about PFF grades, whether they're accurate or not, but PFF grades tell you that Anthony Bradford's a very bad guard. They tell you that Mike Jarrell is a very bad tackle right now. They tell you that Stone Forsythe was a very bad tackle. All things that most people be like, yep, agree with that. They tell you that Charles Cross is our best offensive lineman. Everyone be like, yep, I agree with that. But then when it starts to get into the guard position and your priors and it conflicts with your priors, all of a sudden it's like, well, PFF isn't that accurate. So I just would want to check you on that. Like, sure, it's not like the only thing that matters, but relative to a total lack of way to evaluate an offensive lineman from a statistic standpoint, PFF grades are as useful as anything else out there. And if I think it is reasonable to expect that Brandon Sheriff is performing at or worse level to Laken Tomlinson, and that's part of why the Jacksonville Jaguars are struggling, and that's part of why he's available in trade. So is it more likely that Brandon Sheriff is like the 5-time Pro Bowler he used to be and this ass kicker, and that the Jaguars want to get rid of a really good player just to recoup some draft capital? Or is it more likely that Brandon Sheriff is not that good anymore, wouldn't necessarily come in here and be that much better than what we're getting from Laken Tomlinson and cost you a draft pick? I think that's much more likely. I also will acknowledge that Brandon Sheriff at like 80% or 70% of what he's been is a step up from Anthony Bradford and what he's been. He just is. So, we'll see. We'll see about what happens there. All in all, where I'm at is oddly encouraged. Oddly encouraged. I fully expect and not expect. I fully am embraced for them falling back down defensively against the 49ers the week after the bye. At the same time, I'm looking forward to that game in a way that I wouldn't have been without the way the defense played yesterday. I think you're going to see DK Metcalf back. Hopefully you're going to see Abe Lucas. I think that's a huge, huge thing. I think Connor Williams and Gino are going to practice snaps like 1,000 times. I mean, this is an issue with Connor Williams. It's been an issue in Miami. So I don't think it's going to just stop, but I think that that's going to happen. I think Mike McDonald with 2 weeks to prep for Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. I'm interested. Color me intrigued. Christian McCaffrey will be back. They're going to be feeling good about themselves, but there's differences between the time that it's not just Christian McCaffrey that'll be different. Byron Murphy didn't play in that game against the 49ers. They had Brandon Ayuk in that game. They will not have Brandon Ayuk when they play next. There'll be other differences in the game. And so I'm just kind of curious, can we get a similar performance against the 49ers that we just got against the Rams? Because I'll tell you all, even if the Seahawks lose, which they probably will at this point, to the 49ers, if they play a similar impressive, encouraging game defensively, then we're on to something here. Then we can start saying, all right, how do we fix the other problems? We can turn our attention to some of these other things. And that's more than we had a week ago. Like it was in a free fall a week ago. So, very frustrating game, embarrassing set of mistakes. If you look at this game, if you want to look at it in the most positive light, I will just say the Seahawks threw 2 interceptions inside the 6-yard line, missed an extra point, dropped an interception that led to a field goal, popped a pass into the air for a 3rd interception that was right in the hands, had multiple passes bounce right off players' hands, had multiple penalties go completely against them that were absolutely crucial and turned the game around. And there's things I'm not even remembering that also went bad. And they lost in overtime. Like, typically, like that's a game that you should lose, like you lost the Bills game. Against a quality opponent, when you make that many atrocious mistakes, even one of those mistakes, you should lose pretty easily. All of those mistakes. Rams, any team of that quality should win. They gave up 7 sacks. Like, 60% pressure rate. Like there's so much that was going the wrong way, and they should have still won. So there's this undeniable quality to the Seahawks team that you just look at it and you're like, there's a diamond in there. It is covered in grimy mud and rock right now, and it's just gross. But it's still worth mining. It's still worth harvesting. It's still worth shining and making something special out of it. So that's where I am. And I think with that, I will let you guys know I will be going to that game down in San Francisco. I'll be going to all the rest of the road games, so I'll be covering those for you guys, hoping that we'll be able to get on the field and do all that stuff. It'd be really fun if the Seahawks could win in San Francisco. Certainly would enjoy that. A lot of road games to come, a lot of chances for the team to bond, a lot of chances for the team to kind of have the us against the world mentality, and we'll see what they do. If folks have not already clicked like and subscribe, please do. I greatly appreciate it. If you have not gone to hello.pagliacci.com/hawk-blogger, please do that. Support the partner, get some great pizza for yourself, great deals. Sign up there, get great deals on Pagliacci pizza, salads, gelato, all the great stuff there. Election night is coming up tomorrow. Whoever you're voting for, please vote. I've already voted. My family's voted. My kids have voted. My parents have voted. Everyone I know so far has voted. Please vote. Whoever you're voting for. And I don't talk about politics generally here because I think sports is kind of an escape from that, and it's something where we can unite behind a common cloth as opposed to religion and politics and other things that tend to be a little bit more divisive. I grew up with a lot of really conservative friends. I grew up with, very progressive folks in family and other places. I have friends that are putting their votes behind different candidates and would vote differently on different ballot measures. I just want everyone to vote. Like, make your voice heard. Make sure that you get represented in this democracy, because what we have here is really special, and I certainly value it. So I hope you take the chance to do that and make sure that you get counted as someone who's invested in this country. It's a special place. All right. With that, folks, remember tomorrow morning, we will have Robert Mays at 8:30. We'll have Mike Randall at 8 a.m. We'll have fun talking about what's going on there. Poor Robert. The Bears also in bad space. We'll talk with him about that. All that's presented by Pagliacci. And Wednesday we'll have Big Ray's Rewind. And Thursday, tune in. You don't know what's coming Thursday. We'll figure out what's going to happen there. Someone was asking about Grant Cohn next week. I'll definitely reach out to Grant. I'm hoping that maybe I can actually do a show live with him down there. We'll see if that works out. Probably not, but we'll see if it works out. And I would be crazy to not remind you all, we've made another few sales at JK Boots, jkboots.com. If you use code HawkBlogger, you get 10% off. You still get an opportunity to get a Seahawks themed pair of boots, custom made just for you, only pair in the world. And when we get to 30 sales of boots, which is just another few sales away, we're going to donate the second pair of boots to a wildland firefighter, and from the Wildland Firefighters Foundation, who protects our forests from forest fires. These boots are key to them doing their jobs. And so this is a win-win-win. You guys get to get a pair of boots from a local company based in Spokane, 10% off. It's a great deal on really amazing boots. And then you get a chance to get a custom pair of boots that are Seahawks themed, and you help contribute to the Wildland Firefighters Foundation and get somebody who's fighting fires for us in the Northwest a free pair of boots that'll protect them and protect all of us. So head on over to jkboots.com, take advantage of that. Head on over to pagliacci.com and take advantage of all that they have to offer there. All right, folks. Appreciate all of you. Take care on the rest of this Monday. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at HawkBlogger. This has been episode 225 of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.